And we are going live. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, George?
Awesome, Frank.
How's it going? Oh, and all I see is Triple X's iPhone now.
Let's see. We're having
Technical difficulties there? That didn't take very long.
Yeah, let's get back here. Here we go.
All right. So how have
Sorry
you
about
been?
that. That was through the Bluetooth. Awesome, Frank. How about you,
No,
bud?
that's fine. I can't complain. I mean, I'm going a little stir crazy, like I've told everybody. Looking forward to getting the fuck out of the house.
Yeah, same here.
As often as possible. Yeah, that's pretty much been everything that's been going on here. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people here on the podcast and talking about a lot of different things. And we've known each other for a decent amount of time at this point, and you have some of the more interesting stories that I've heard. So I'm curious how much of that you're willing to share with the general public.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, well, we'll work together for a while. And when actually, we had these Monday morning meetings when they were actually fun, we would look at each other, talk about numbers and who did what for the whole week. And that was the fun part. And then we will wrap up by saying, what was one thing that was really odd that happened to you the prior week? And that's how we would end the meeting. And I was a little hesitant. I wasn't going to share any of that with the team, but, we had such a close team and such a bond that I didn't feel like, I didn't need to share the story. But here it is. I mean, one day I'm on the road running like crazy, about to go to a client. And, I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So, when
As
the alarm,
people do.
yeah. And, and it's one of these rarest times I just like park the car, just run in straight through, get in, and not even like put toilet paper on the toilet seat. I'm just like sitting right through, which is rarely happening. So, I'm sitting
So
there.
normally
I'm all
you would consider yourself a nester. You coat the toilet seat in toilet paper.
I would. Yeah, I would imagine that, majority of the males will do that. I don't know about the females, but, I don't want to talk for them. But for us guys, I would say 90%. But this was that one rare moment when I sat down, I was, oh, yeah, that was a good one. And you turn around and you see no toilet paper all of a sudden. And then you don't lose your hope. You look to your left, you look to your right, and there's a huge sign that says I like to go green. Your first thought, my first thought at that moment is I'm gonna go brown on the wall.
You did go brown.
Yeah, that was the end result. So, at that moment I could either call the branch and ask for toilet paper, or option B is I looked down, I was like,
Wait, hold
socks.
on. Let's put a pin in that for a second. You would have.
Yeah.
What do you think would have happened if you called the Starbucks that you were at and said, "Hey, I'm stuck in the bathroom. You guys are out of toilet paper, and I just went and didn't realize it." How do you feel like that would have gone?
Pretty embarrassing. But I wouldn't have minded. But at the same time, I was like, these guys are busy. It's probably going to take a while. I'm in a rush. So, I had to do what a man had to do.
Yeah.
I looked down, I saw my socks, and my next thought was, what else don't I need from my body right now that I'm wearing? And, the boxes was the other thing. I believe because I had an appointment and it was closer to winter, so I had to use my socks. I needed my socks for the day. So I went with the underwear. And that was the moment that I said I like to go brown on the wall.
So where did you end up getting rid of you obviously use the boxers to clean yourself up. Where did the boxers end up?
On the wall, on the side. Somebody had to clean it up. And I really apologize, but we can make our transition to how they feel about Trump and all that stuff. I didn't feel so bad afterwards.
Well, what do you mean?
It comes back to how much, they were so negative about Trump at the time and stuff like that. So this happened a while back. So I've had the guilt feeling for about 2 or 3 years after doing this. Every time I would go into a Starbucks, I couldn't believe what I've done because somebody had to clean that. So I felt really bad until Starbucks took the policy of saying, oh, anti-Trump stance. I was like, great.
Oh, I didn't
I
realize
didn't feel
Starbucks
so
had
bad.
officially taken an anti-Trump stance.
At some point, they did. Not
I know that
anymore, but at some point.
there was that big thing about them with law enforcement, which,
Yep.
you know, but yeah. So I take it you're very well. I already knew this, and I take it you're very pro-Trump, right?
I
Or
am very, very pro-Trump.
so what's that like being you come from Greece, you grew up here, you have a lot of family that still lives in Greece, you still have a lot of family that lives here. How does that fit in? Because a lot of people feel like Trump is considered, a lot of people consider him to be a racist and all these different things, and anti this, anti that. Um, where do you get your patriotism from, and where do where? How did you arrive at your feeling towards him?
Honestly, Frank, I've been, for those of that don't know me, I've been a lifetime Democrat actually until 2015, probably
I
towards
actually
the
didn't know that.
2000. Yeah, I was a lifetime Democrat. Actually voted for Obama twice. Didn't care much of politics as much as I do now. But I always had a problem with wars, displacing different types of people from their homes, home countries, and destruction basically in the whole Middle East. We can start by Iraq, you know. So, my stance is, why do I support Trump? Number one is he hasn't created a single war. That was my number one thing. The minute I vote for anybody, if they create war, they're done for me. So,
Right.
and I've seen this play out, with the two Bush, father and son, Clinton and Obama. And, I don't know, people can walk around, call me whatever they want. Whatever Trump gets called, I get called the same names. I have no doubt about it. And I've been on the other side, so I know it's just an excuse just to move forward. But
What do you mean move forward?
I mean, it's just everybody has their own agenda, and their agenda right now is to be against law enforcement, which is so funny because that's unheard of actually anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you should actually mention that it's unheard of anywhere in the world. One of my close friends actually got back from right as everything was kind of happening and everyone was locking down back in March. He got back from Indonesia, and he's New York City police. He's New York City PD, and over there, just the mere mention of him being in law enforcement is like automatically gets him to the front of every line. Like if even someone whispers it, it gets him to the front of every line. Every girl in the bar wants his phone number because they like police in Indonesia are so not only so well respected, but they're rare. So they're like, oh, you're an American cop. We want to hang out with you. Um, and it's so interesting that here so many people are either anti-police or afraid of the police I've got a lot of friends in law enforcement. One of my best friends he was in law enforcement. His wife is currently in law enforcement down in Texas. And they've got it fucking rough, man. Like they've got it rough down there. And it's hard to look at people and hard to see that people are so anti the people that are sworn to protect them, you know?
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And you know what, Frank? I was having this discussion with one of my friends. You know, politics. What the hell is politics? Politics is, you disagree with somebody else. I might disagree with you. You might disagree with me. But for many, many, many years, it was always talking about it and finding the middle. You're not
Sure.
100% right, nor am I 100% right. Nor is Trump right in everything he does? Absolutely not.
No, for sure.
But the minute you say Trump, it just everything gets triggered. Just by the name,
Why
people
do you
get
think that
triggered.
is?
Uh, he's just that type of guy because of his ego, and I think he feeds off that. He does a very well job. I mean, I just had this conversation with my brother the other day. My brother's like, "Do you really want him? Does he really want to win anymore? Would you want to do this again?" And I was like,
Does who
"Of course
really
he
want to win
does."
anymore? You're
Trump.
talking, does
Does
Trump really want to win anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Like he was questioning me, do you think Trump wants to win anymore? And I was like, you know what, you're right. And that's a legit question. Because, you wake up from the time he wakes up, by the time he sleeps, and anything in between, they're even curious about which way he pisses at night, probably. It's
Yeah.
like, it's
Um,
ridiculous. So, does everything he say make sense or maybe not? But his message is clear to me, and it is what it is. I respect everybody else's opinion, but right now, with everything that's going on, it's no longer about politics.
no, it's
And
definitely not. I
you
also,
know,
just to interject for a second, I feel like nobody really considers the fact that it's being the president of the United States, especially right now, is probably the most miserable job in the world because of the backlash that you get for every decision that you make. And
yeah,
maybe I'm naive, but I look at that and I say, okay, he was a multi, at bare minimum, he's a multimillionaire, and he gave up being able to retire for serving his country, and he's
hmm
not taking a salary. There's a bunch of different things that he's doing, and I feel like, on one hand, why would anyone want to do that? And on the other hand, it's like, well, he must really feel like he's got to do the right thing and want to do the right thing. But yeah, I think it's one of the most miserable jobs in the world right now, because
oh
I
yeah,
don't think that there's any way for anybody to really gain any favor with anyone. It's always, well, he went this way, he should have gone that way. If he went that way, he should have gone the other way. There's no winning with anything. I
exactly.
wouldn't be surprised if he wants out. You know, and you bring up a good point with that. I wouldn't be surprised.
But again, I want to take that a little further. I would love to say that he's actually going to gain more momentum, and he actually feeds through all this hate in a positive way, and he'll take it a step further. They're showing him way back in the polls again, just like last time. And election night will be watched on CNN.
I do
The
feel
only
like it's
day
going to
I
be
watch on
closer this time, though. I feel like
might be.
it's going to be closer because of how polarized the nation has become. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely, absolutely. Listen, if it's a good candidate on the other side, I would vote for him. But what they stand for right now, I don't even come close of standing with them on any issue. That's my problem. I've gone so away from the Democrats that not even I wouldn't even vote. I'm not a true Republican either. So if another Republican comes along right now, if Trump was there, I'm just true
well,
to
you're
Trump.
you're
That's it.
evaluating.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
it.
like you're
After that, it could
evaluating
be
the value of the candidate, not you're not voting because of party. You're voting because
that's
I believe in what this
that's
person
exactly
has to
it.
say. I believe in what that person has to say, and that I
That
feel like is
I
supposed to be the way that it goes, isn't it?
Well, right on, Frank. So, all these people that are creating all these narratives, where have they been for 30 years? All right, so let's just say it's the younger generation. Where were their parents when George Bush got out and said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, and what do we find there? but golden toilets. Were the weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
Then we moved on to Syria. In between, Obama took care of Libya, Egypt. You know, nobody talks about it. How many millions of people that we've displaced between the 4 past presidents. But then again, people have the balls to turn around of saying that he's a Hitler, that he's fascist, and he's, all kinds of names.
Well, it always kind of makes me laugh when they compare him to Hitler, because it's like he's killed nobody. He's going back to what was it, last summer or the summer before, when was it Afghanistan or Iraq shot one of our drones out of the sky, and he had the opportunity to retaliate, but
It was Iran.
Iran, okay. And he had the opportunity to retaliate, but it potentially would kill up to 150 innocents, not military, but like bystanders, collateral damage. And he opted not to, because in his mind, he said that we haven't lost anybody, we lost a piece of machinery, and the cost it's not equal. So when they compare him to Hitler, I look at a move like that and I'm like, okay, there's no way you can compare someone weighing the lives of 150 people versus the deaths of millions of people. They don't compare. And then when they say he's fascist, it's like, I don't really think people understand what fascism is anymore.
Well,
They just think that anything that's not what they like, anything that doesn't suit their opinion, is fascist. That's what they. Yeah. It's like, oh, you disagree with me, you're fascist. You're racist. You're xenophobic. You're, every name in the book, because you disagree.
For Frank, yeah, and this is not something new, unfortunately. They've been, and when I say they, I always use the word they, and they question me of who's they, is the radical left. Radical left. And to me, never in my life, yes, I was born here, but my parents went back, and I came here when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. We all learned the same history. We all learned the same culture. We all lived and breathe the same air, and we live under one flag. And who gave us all this? And why do I have to talk about something that had happened 600 years ago, 100 years ago? We started changing names for everything, for Black Lives Matter, for this.
How do you feel about them taking down? How do you feel about them taking down monuments now?
Well, before we go into that, you brought up a very good point. Before we move on to that point, you said before that, they tried to get Trump into a war. I didn't want to skip because you hit it right on the head. And very recently, until 2-3 weeks ago, I don't know if you've heard, but all the top generals within are talking all against Trump. Why? Once again, Bolton was in there, which is another warmonger. He's created all the wars during Bush era. Let's look him up.
Well, I mean, generally speaking,
let's look him up. We got search engines. We got what he's responsible for. Trump said no to him once with what you just said, Iran. He tried to draw him into another war numerous times. Some of them that we know about and some of them that we don't know about. So after that, Trump knew, and that was Trump's biggest mistake, is getting that guy in there. Right. His biggest mistake right there, Bolton. But all these generals are talking against him.
I feel like in general, what ends up happening, and a lot of people lose sight of, is that career military officers, not just general, like, oh, you enlisted or you find yourself in the military through education, ROTC, whatever. Career military generals and higher ups want war because it's what they live for. Like that's their, it gives them purpose. So it wouldn't surprise me that, somebody that all these generals are talking against him if they're not being able to do. Essentially, they have no purpose in a broad term um, if they're not at war because they don't have the opportunity to lead or advance or well, I'm sure they've got opportunities to advance, but it's not the same. Um, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, no, no. That's you brought up a great point, and you really set me up on what I had in mind to really talk about as well, especially the generals being against Trump right now. And that's fine. You know, I like to say we just move forward. If he wants to move forward, we move forward. He said he would drain the swamp from day one, and he's going after the swamp, and we're seeing exactly who the swamp is. It bothers people. That's fine. When you call him the swamp, and the media is, and I'm not saying Fox or CNN and all this. He he always criticized for using Twitter, right? That's the other thing. Let's look at how much of the media actually covers the left and how much of the media actually just covers him. What, we got 2 or 3 channels versus their powerhouse 90% media controlled,
Well,
80%, whatever it is.
it is very disturbing how it's not news anymore. It's just spin, and I think Fox News is guilty of this to a large extent as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, you don't really get a non-biased. You're not getting just facts. You're getting more of the newscaster's opinion. And I've said this before, but in 2016, when you look at the election and you look at what was being broadcast on the news at the time, and you could flip to any channel and you could tell which side they tend to lean to. You flip to CNN, and this is before you could tell who had really won. We're talking like 5-6 o'clock at night. If you flip to CNN, they would say, "Oh, Hillary's won by a landslide. They've got all these states," and you'd look at the map, and it would show all blue. And if you flip over to Fox News, they would show all the states as red, and the exact opposite. Before either of them could really know anything, for that matter, let alone who's winning or losing or whatever. And it just shows how biased everything has become. What's terrible right now for me is that because of that and various other things.
I'm sorry, Frank. I'm laughing because you said 2016. And when I think about that night, that's a special night because that was one of the greatest nights. I must have stayed until 5 o'clock and watched CNN, which I watched basically once or twice or 3 times at most in every 4 years. And election night is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was asleep by that time. But what bothers me about it is that now, with everything going on with the coronavirus and these protests and all the other stuff going on in the world, I don't trust what I'm getting from the media at all. You look at what you're hearing about all these states that are spiking and all this other stuff, and then you look at articles that say that they're getting all these false positives, or that the testing isn't really accurate, or you're only getting narrative instead of just straight numbers. And they've also stopped. I noticed, I read an article today that mentioned this, and I hadn't thought about it, but they've kind of shied away from the number of COVID deaths. They're just saying, "Oh, we've gotten 10,000 new positive, 20,000 new positive," but you're not hearing about anything other than the new positive tests, and you're also not hearing about by how many. Like, are we getting 10,000 new positive because we've ramped up testing by 15,000? Are we getting 10,000 new positive because the percentage of positives are going up? Like, you only get the number without context, which I think is dangerous, in my opinion.
Right. It's incredible what's going on out there. And you just hit it on the head. And I don't think we do get news in this country. I'm just being straightforward. When was the last time you heard anything about, I don't know, flipping through CNN, maybe 20, 30 seconds, you're going to have world news.
Right.
you know, here it's all Trump, Trump, Trump. It's all about whatever. It's like you said it before. It's all about opinions and it's all about driving their agenda. And I'm not picking sides. Both sides are the same way, right?
For sure.
So having said this and talking about Corona, right? You said it. I mean, okay. So we have to hear about the numbers. What about all the other numbers? How about the flu? Nobody's dying from the flu. Nobody's dying from pneumonia. What are they doing? You know what's the most disturbing thing recently that I've been seeing online from my friends, Frank? That either themselves or their spouse is having to go back to work and they have to test. So 1 week they're testing positive.
Hmm.
Next week, and with no symptoms.
Sure.
Then next week they're testing again. They're coming up negative. And then they're doing the antibody test, which is coming back negative. So you
Well,
could test all you want.
number one, I think that the antibody test is useless as it stands right now. I think that that test in particular is useless for a number of reasons. I think number one, the rate of false positive and false negatives is too high. You're basically at a coin flip as whether or not it's accurate, and that was proven.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's not enough research. Well, we don't know of any research that gives like strong evidence of how long you're immune for. So sure, you may have the antibodies, but how long do you actually remain resistant to it? On top of that, on the CDC website, for both the coronavirus for the test itself and the antibody test, there's one of my friends posted a screenshot of this on his Facebook. It essentially says that if you test positive, they encourage you to get another test because and even if it continues to test positive for both the coronavirus or the antibodies, that it doesn't necessarily mean anything because you could have just been exposed to another virus that they consider coronavirus family. And then
Right.
they say, such as the common cold. So
Yeah. They,
what are we
so they
doing?
loop everything together.
Yeah.
And they call it, oh, this is one form of COVID. The other one is the other form of COVID. So, it's incredible. Hopefully we get through it soon. We won't have to talk about it, but my belief is that we're all going to get it at some point, right?
Well, yeah.
We're
I
just
mean,
hoping. I mean, it's inevitable that we're not going to get it. At some point, we will get it. But we'll have more information rather than just saying, wash your hands and stay 6 feet away. It's like telling people, wipe your ass and wash your hands. Make sure you wash your hands after you wipe your ass. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
That's as stupid of a comment that will be, to wash your hands. Where the fuck have people been since they were born? Like, we wash our fucking hands.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right.
So, the other things is about masks. I have mixed feelings. I don't think they're protective, but, they're talking about, outside being good versus the inside. Frank, I'm all about following rules when I know something is for sure or close to sure as possible. So,
Right.
I look at all these news wires, they just feed you whatever they want. What I
Well,
can do for myself and for my family is just take as much precaution as possible. Wear the mask wherever I have to. But, when I'm outside taking a walk, I see people wearing them in their cars, bicycles. And I'm not judging anybody, by the way. I'm not judging anybody. That's their right. But what I'm seeing that's very dangerous is that road rage that we used to have. You're no longer in a car. So you can't, especially the times that we're going through with economics and, families, it's tough times.
Sure.
If you say the wrong thing, somebody that's about going through a difficult time, just you're not in your car anymore. They're not just going to flip you the bird. So that's the next stage. And I see this all the time, even when I'm going out just for a simple walk with kids. The older people getting out and just confronting younger kids, or, it's just, if you have a problem with something, you take your own precaution,
Sure.
not blame others.
I mean, similar to you, I have mixed feelings about the mask. I think that in certain situations, it's definitely possible. It definitely helps in some situations, as long as there's a minimum standard for the mask itself met. If we're to believe that what they say is that the mask, if it's not an N95 mask, the purpose of the mask is to protect others because
Yep.
it prevents, water droplets and things like that. And my thought about that is if you see someone wearing a bandana and they cough or sneeze, chances are it's going to, it's not going to have any kind of seal around it. I don't like the idea of them just saying you need to have a face covering, because that does, in my opinion, that does nothing. I think that there needs to be more, if they're going to require it. And I'm not a huge fan of having to wear a mask to begin with. But if you're going to go down that road, it needs to be, you have to wear a mask of at least this quality. And then I don't know if you saw this, but today Governor Murphy just released that he wants you to wear masks outdoors now, in public places if social distancing is not practicable. So there's another situation where
Sure, right. Frankie. I would love to see them enforce that. I will love to enforce. I will love. You have people beating on each other. They don't do shit. What are they going to do? See, this comes back to the other stuff. Let's come back to the police stuff now, because let's merge it together.
Sure.
First, they're telling us what to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, you
yeah,
stay 6 feet, right?
Stay 6 feet away.
Out, right?
Avoid your. I mean, for a long time, it was you can't go anywhere.
If you go to the restaurant, you can't go inside. If you go inside, do what? It's basically, it's like me talking to my children.
Right. You know what? I've said that a lot, that I feel like, especially today, I was reading about the how we now have to wear masks outside now. And it was basically him saying that because of the situation that he's seen at bars and restaurants and people not complying, now you have to wear them all over. And I'm like, okay, you're basically talking to the state like we're children and you're our parent. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're an elected official, and you're supposed to kind of, I don't want to sound like one of these crazy people that say I pay your salary by paying taxes, but we elected him, and it's his responsibility to serve us, not the other way around. And I don't think that there's really any evidence.
Yeah, they're serving us, Frank.
Yeah.
They're serving us.
That depends on what your definition of serving us
is. Yeah, you know what I mean. They're serving it to us.
So yeah, I've not seen any evidence that says that wearing a mask outdoors is really all that helpful. And now they're also saying that it's airborne. So in that situation, like, what are you going to do? The just by breathing, essentially, they're saying you can catch it if you're sharing the same air as someone that has it. And to me, that's just going to drum up a lot of fear. Of fear. Because if you tell someone that just by breathing near me, we're in the same vicinity as me, you could potentially give it to me. That's a stretch.
But once again, we have the same people. It doesn't matter what their political stance is, by the way. I'm putting politics aside. But you got the same people that are telling you what to do are the same people that have blood in their hands, Frank. And how do they have blood in their hands is when COVID started back in March and a lot of people from the nursing homes started testing positive, they went to the hospital, and guess what happens? They get released. They go back where? He directed them to go back to nursing homes.
Yeah,
look at our death rate in New Jersey.
Huge
but
mistake.
nobody talks about it. But well, you can make mistakes. Mistakes are something that you apologize for and you move forward. This is not a mistake. Let's just say Trump made that decision. What would happen?
Or there'd be riots, without a doubt. It'd be
Cuomo,
pandemonium.
Cuomo made the same. Cuomo over at New York made the same decision.
Yeah. It was a huge mistake. I don't understand what they, I mean, just logically thinking, I am not medically qualified. I don't have any,
Yeah,
I've got a business degree. I don't have anything in medicine. But if you come
exactly.
out and
Same here.
say, if you come out and say
Be
to me,
believable.
what's that?
Be believable. Like, earn the trust first, and then
Well,
at least feed me the bullshit.
even beyond that, just let's back up to when they made the decision. If you think about it, like, let's just lay out the facts of what they were telling us at that time. And basically what they were saying was it's most dangerous to people 70 years old or older and those who have compromised immune systems. What logic sounds acceptable to take someone who's 70 years old or older in a nursing home that now has it and to tell them, no, you can't go to the hospital. You have to go back to the nursing home where it's just going to continue to run its rounds in that space. I don't understand the logic behind that in the first place, you know?
Well, it's not logical, number one. And if you think even about it twice, even if you're not sure, what do? You don't take that much risk and put that same person right back to the most vulnerable person, right?
Well, that's my point. That's exactly my point.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not a huge fan of how they handled that. And then you hear about how they, rightfully so, they villainized the nursing homes that would be telling families that their loved ones are okay, and oh, you just can't talk to them because for one reason or another. Meanwhile, they're already dead. I think that that's also horrible, but I think that that would have been avoided if they didn't send back everybody that had COVID back into the nursing home, into the most. It's literally like sending the fox into the henhouse. That's
Yep.
exactly what they did when they sent those people back to the nursing home.
Yeah.
Exactly what they did.
But so we got COVID, we got Corona, yeah, we got records amount of cases, most actually in the world, right?
Sure.
I think we hit 3 million cases. Oh yeah, we just talk about the cases, right?
Mm.
How many cases we get? Nobody talks about how many people. Yes, they do talk about how many deaths, but what's emphasized in the media? It's always how many thousands of people are getting sick per day. No survival rate. Like, talk about that. If you go around about pneumonia the same way you go about COVID, uh, I'm pretty sure we'll get the same results.
Probably.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
for pneumonia and stuff like that, we can fight for it so it's less dangerous. I agree. The virus is dangerous. But, you know, I don't know. At some point, like you said, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just going with the flow. But it's just hard for the same people that turn your society inside out to tell you what you can do now.
yeah.
So, man, you have to wear a mask going out. Okay, so they're telling us we're going to do that. What's next? Oh,
Well,
by the way, they're telling you don't need cops or you need less cops,
that I
right?
think is total bullshit. I think
But
that's
that's what
total
they're telling
bullshit.
you. That's what they want. And this is not something new, Frank. This is all started with Cuomo, with bail reform. You had a lot of people switch during their COVID updates per daily updates. Oh, Cuomo looks so good. Where are these same people that are fighting the police? Aren't there bad people in every industry?
Sure.
Just the cops are bad?
Well,
I don't know,
I
like as growing up,
they're a scapegoat essentially. They're the people that have had the target put on their back
well, yeah,
because they're the easy
absolutely.
target. They're the easiest
Well,
target
listen,
to go after.
you know how I look at this, Frank? This is so dangerous. And again, only in this country, you will put the police in what's called in the middle of protesters. And some of them are peaceful and some of them are not. But nowhere in the world you will take your cops and put them right in the middle of your protesters and tell them not to do anything. It's like, and this is exactly what's going on. In New York, you got de Blasio and Cuomo tying their hands, basically. They're everybody's saying whatever you want to the just being disrespectful. That's fine. And then it's the same mentality of sending out your quarterback during a football game, and your coach is telling you, don't throw a touchdown pass, don't throw a complete pass. Let the game just flow through. You're not going to do your job today. That's day in and day out. It's the same people that pass bail reform, Frank. Bail reform is it's unheard of. If you explain to somebody what bail reform is, basically, as long as you don't kill somebody or seriously harm somebody, you can steal up to $1,200 per day. Walk into somewhere, and if you get caught, you'll be out the next day.
Yeah.
Well, where is that heard of, Frank? Can you explain to me?
Uh,
And wait a minute, and then you turn around and you tell me you're against that society that's giving you the freedom to do that with no consequences, and then, okay, sure. But then we'll
Yeah.
get called names for thinking that way. That's fine. What I'm afraid of, Frank, and I'll wrap it up there. What I'm most afraid of about the cops is they're talking about defunding and doing away with the cops. They're not going to do away with the cops. What I'm saying is, well, they're telling you exactly what's going to happen. They don't want guns. They don't want this. They don't want that. They don't want this. And you know what? They're getting everything that they want.
I don't think that they're going to be able to take away guns at this point. You can
Well,
yeah, I don't think that
well,
that's ever going to happen at this point because people are kind of realizing and waking up that uh, if you take away the police, especially, you can't. You have to be able to defend yourself.
sure.
Um,
But the police right now, I agree with you and disagree with you. What I agree with you is they do want cops as well. But what type of cops do they want, Frank? Who do they want to replace them with? The ones that are going to let you live just like today? Or the ones that are going to come to your house, and their candidates have been openly saying this, we're going to come to your house and take your guns. Who's going to do that? It's the same people that are telling you to wear the face masks, how to piss, how far to stay away from other people.
so
So I don't
I'm
know.
just going
I
to
hope
say
it
one
doesn't get
thing
to that.
about them physically coming to someone's house and taking their guns. I can 150% guarantee that every single one of my friends or every single individual that I know of that owns a firearm legally, if you showed up at their house and said, turn over all your guns, you're not getting shit from them. There's no way. There's no way any of them would turn over their guns because they have the right to own them. There's no way they would turn them over. Not a chance.
We also have freedom of speech, Frank, in this country,
Do we?
right? Well, we recently saw with Drew Brees, right? He came out, he talked about standing for the flag, right? He was so proud of it. He came out with his thoughts, which were greatly respected for one day. And then the next day he came back and apologized for everything. That's even worse. They took all his words and they shoved it.
We really need people to start.
Because we live in a country, and this is, and they're calling us fascists, and they're calling us, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're
Well,
threatening somebody with their job, basically. If you don't come out and apologize, this is what's going to happen. But meanwhile, you got stadiums that are about to change names. You got teams that are about to change names. Frank, did you ever think about, as growing up as a kid, like when you bought jerseys? I know you're not a big sports guy, but I never thought in my life whose jersey I was buying, whether they were white, black, yellow, brown. I don't give a shit.
No, not even.
Like, where is all this shit coming from?
I can't remember the last time I equated anything to someone's race. I really can't.
Yeah.
And what I think is scary about all this is that there's no end. Like even Hamilton, for example, I'm sure you've seen on Disney Plus. It got released, and this is a play that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you're talking thousands of dollars per seat just to get into. And now they're saying, oh, it should be removed because the founding fathers all owned slaves, and this is racist. And not for nothing, in addition to that, have you seen the cast and how diverse it is?
Frank, actually, I've read the whole history, world history, and many, many times. And when you go back, actually, and you look at any kind of history, doesn't matter at what point you start in history, all the greatest things in Europe, in Africa, anywhere in the world were built by slaves.
Yeah. It's sad, but you're right.
It is sad.
It's,
but
it's terrible
kings,
to have to say, but it's a fact.
That's the whole history. I'm not writing that.
I mean, it goes back as far as you think about the pyramids.
Absolutely. And anything that's, I mean, at the end of the day, what do we do with our history? Whether it's good or bad, you learn from it, not to, even if it's bad part of it, so you don't make the same mistakes moving forward. Right?
Sure.
That's your history.
The other thing too that I think that nobody is really seeing or noticing because the media doesn't really cover it is that the people that are tearing down these statues are not necessarily the people that are peacefully protesting.
No.
They're not. And I got to be honest, I don't, whether I support or not what people are protesting, as long as it's a peaceful protest, you 100%, whether I agree with you or not, have the right to protest. It's a constitutional right. It's the first constitutional right, your right to assembly and free speech. And I think that it's imperative that they're able to do that. But the problem is that there are opportunists that are making distorting the message, and that's all the media picks up on. And then what amazes me too, if you see any of the videos of like most of these monuments that are coming down, the people tearing them down are usually white, which blows my mind. I don't know if you've noticed that. They're usually white.
Absolutely. And they're anarchist.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. They're anarchists. They don't want you to remember the history.
No.
They want to be able to do everything that they want. They don't care about
race, color, religion.
They just want there to be no laws.
Yep. They want to take the American flag and burn it in front of you because we don't have laws against it. Frank, that's the thing. Everybody talks about our younger generation being snowflakes and this and that. I always say, who created those snowflakes?
Yeah. You're not wrong about that.
So, let's think about that. Let's take some responsibility. When I came here, I remember in elementary school, we had cops come in for the DARE program back then. But it just established the relationship between police and you as a young kid to teach respect, to paint these guys as they're there for you,
sure,
to protect you.
Yeah.
But now, sure. And you know what? With the George Floyd incident, 96% of Americans basically said it was a murder, right? Take that power, take that momentum, and drive it through. Don't let these anarchists get in there and ruin your message. Okay,
so how do you feel about, now that you brought it up, how do you feel about that?
Feel about the protesting anarchists?
No, the George Floyd situation. What happened?
It was a murder.
Yeah.
It was a murder.
No,
Not
I
only the
completely agree
cop,
with you.
all I believe the whoever the cop and all the other three cops were just standing there should be held equally accountable, because you can't just sit there and just watch what's going on without doing something. If you're a
So
human being,
I don't necessarily think that all three of the other police officers should be held equally accountable, and I'll tell you why. Um, the one that was the other senior ranking officer, um,
hmm
he should be held just as accountable because he knows better.
yeah,
The other two, they were like their second day or their second shift on the job, and even though they may have not quite agreed with it, um, I can understand being intimidated by someone else's experience and not wanting to speak up or break rank for that. I think that they should be held accountable to a lesser degree than the other two, but 100%, I mean, that guy's a monster for just kneeling on his neck. There was no reason for that.
yeah.
And then you see the Rashard Brooks shooting, and the more and more video that gets released about that, the more I feel like the officers were justified in what they did, because he wasn't he wasn't just he wasn't being cordial. He wasn't being peaceful. He was cordial and peaceful right up until the point that they said, okay, now you have to take responsibility for your actions and you're going to jail. You're going to get a DUI. And then you don't punch an officer in the face, steal his taser, fire it at him, and not deal with consequences. I mean, you're at that point, you're a danger to the general public. You know, you discharge
Well,
a taser in an officer's face, you're a danger to the general public.
it's just I believe these things happen often, Frank. These kind of incidents, and my thought about this is just approaching somebody with respect, right?
Well, that's
Just
what it's
with
all about,
respect.
right?
On,
That's what
on
it's all
both
about.
sides. On both sides. I've
100%.
gotten pulled over. I've gotten pulled over. I've had bad days where I went, with the temper. The guy doesn't know who he's stopping. He doesn't know who the hell is in the car.
Sure.
He doesn't know what the hell of a state of mind that you're at. I've had times where I flipped, and there were times that I was as courteous as possible. But you know what I've learned? Even the times that I was rude and disrespectful in my younger age, I was always wrong.
Sure. You know, something
Always.
that the general public doesn't realize about when an officer goes to perform a traffic stop. And the only reason I know this is because I have friends that have recently gone into law enforcement, and they share about some of the things that they are trained on, right? And one of them, he mentioned that what his department wants him to do is whenever he's approaching a vehicle for a traffic stop, the first thing that he's supposed to do is touch the back of their trunk to put his handprint on their car in case something happens, in case they decide to run, in case, God forbid,
Right.
so that they can at least, and they have an area that there's a specific area of the trunk that they're supposed to touch, so that at least if, let's say, this person backs into him and takes off, obviously they've got the dash cam footage. At least then if they pull that vehicle over, they can dust for fingerprints and see that the officer was there and stuff like that. But he says that from the moment you get out of your vehicle as an officer and approach another, you don't know what you're dealing with. And if you walk
Exactly.
up to a vehicle and all the windows are rolled up, all the lights are turned off, and they just crack the window just enough to give you their stuff, it sets a very different tone from you pull them over, they roll down their windows, they turn the vehicle off, they put it in park, and they show that they're, intending on complying with you. It sets a very different tone, and not only does it get you out of there quicker, but the chances of them wanting to give you some level of leniency goes up because they know that you're not posing a threat to them anymore. And I don't think anybody understands that every time an officer pulls over a vehicle, they could end up getting killed. Realistically, they could end up dead at the end of that traffic stop.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the guy who just said, "Tell my family I love them."
Yeah.
That was his
Terrible.
last words. And you see that on the news?
No, you see you know who I see that from? I see that from my friends who are in law enforcement reposting it.
Yep.
They're the only ones. It's so
And Frank,
sad.
do you care about the police officer's skin color?
Not one
When you
bit.
say I love cops, when I say I love cops, do I care about their skin color?
No. You have no
Right.
reason to care. There's no reason to care.
So
Excuse me.
if America is so bad, my last words, if America is so bad and they don't like this country, we all had parents that came from somewhere, and for some reason, they can move. If you don't like your house, you move. If you don't like where you're living at, you move. These people are not to make changes. The anarchists are just trying to cause chaos. That's all they're
For
doing.
sure. Yeah,
And for
for sure.
all of our families came here for some reason, to better themselves, to escape from something. If you don't like it, move. Go somewhere else. Nobody's
Well,
keeping you
I'm
here.
sure you've seen the meme. America is a country so great that even its haters won't leave, which I think is
I've seen
hilarious.
that. I've seen that. I've seen that. And, you know, I love this country. You asked me about patriotism. My patriotism really began when I had my kids, Frank. Why? Once you start having kids, you then at that point realize your second generation started.
Yeah.
So whether it's many generations, second generation or first generation, it doesn't matter what ethnic background you are. First generation always sucks in the country.
Why do you? How
You
so?
take all the burden, you work your ass off, and you build and establish for your second generation.
That's a good
You
point. I
know,
never thought of that.
that's the way I look at it. And you know what? You had you have so much problems with the world. You have the virus, you have this, with the protests, with the statue taking that, like equality. If we want to fix it, honestly, it's just as it comes back with respect. If you
Sure.
approach somebody with respect, you're gonna find respect. If you approach America the way they've been approaching, doesn't matter about. I don't give two shits about Trump. I don't give two shits about Biden. I care about this country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that everything that you just said is dead on. I think that people need to learn to do a few things. I think they need to learn to approach things from a place of mutual respect and from a live and let live type of mentality.
Yeah,
Because if it's not hurting you, then there's no reason to change somebody else, you know?
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so I really appreciate you hanging out tonight. I really do. We've been
Thanks, Frankie.
meaning to do this for a while. And I'm happy we finally got to do it. Hopefully soon we'll get to do this in person.
Right on, buddy.
You
Can't
know,
wait. And
not have to be
this is exciting.
and maybe not be masked. Who knows?
Exactly. You know, one thing I must say is I don't know how, like, all this time that I got to spend with my kids, I don't know if I'll ever have this much time to ever spend with them. It's been great.
Yeah, I mean that is a really good point. The opportunity to spend time with the people you care about is definitely there, and hopefully, this is going to sound a little weird, but hopefully you never get this kind of time again. Not that I don't want to be able to spend time with family, but hopefully there's not another reason like this until retirement that
Exactly.
you know, that we're spending this much time at home and sedentary, and I just really want to get back to working out. And you know, life is it was, you know.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed, and we'll adjust. We'll
Yeah, for
adjust
sure. Oh,
as
totally.
human beings. We do a good job of adjusting with what's given, as long as we get honesty and the truth. That's the most important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens though.
Frank, I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.